Joining me now, Regev, senior advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was previously Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom. Regev, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Let's start with the tragic situation. Pleasure to have you on. Let's start with the tragic situation of the hostages. Hostage taking, a clear war crime by Hamas, and those hostages, of course, need to be released. Are we any closer to the release of any more hostages?
We surely hope so. You know, Hamas, as you've reported, has kidnapped some 240 people. Unfortunately, today we found the body near the Shifa hospital of one of the hostages, a woman from Kibbutz Be'eri. Her name is Yehudit Weiss. She was 65 years old, a mother of 5. And so she's no longer a hostage. She was dead. The information we have is when she was taken into captivity, when she was abducted by Hamas, she was alive. We've now found her body. It was one of the results of the military operation today. Of course, getting the hostages out remains one of the focal points of our military operation, and we believe that by expediting the military pressure on Hamas, we're actually getting closer to the release of hostages.
So was it a mistake in hindsight, and that's tragic news to hear about this poor woman, was it a mistake for Prime Minister Netanyahu, your boss, to have reportedly turned down a deal at the start of this conflict that would have seen Hamas free women, the elderly, kids, in exchange for a 5-day ceasefire? Isn't that why so many of the families of the hostages are angry with your government?
Sorry, Mehdi, that's just disinformation. There was not a real option for a deal before the ground operation. It was looked at seriously, but Hamas put nothing on the table that could be worked with. And so that's just not correct to say there was an option. We might have an option now for a deal. I can't tell you for sure. We might have an option because the military pressure on Hamas is maybe making Hamas understand that if they want a temporary ceasefire, they need to release hostages. Without that, we're not going to have a temporary ceasefire. So we're hitting Hamas hard, and maybe the military pressure will force them to consider how they look at the hostages. Look, we can't expect them to release hostages because they're suddenly going to become humanitarians, right, Mehdi? They're obviously not. They're brutal, vicious terrorists. And they'll only release hostages when they're release hostages when they're forced to do so.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the military pressure. We are nearly 6 weeks into this bombing campaign and ground invasion. The Gaza Health Ministry says Israel has killed more than 11,000 people in Gaza, including a record number of children. Let me finish my question.
No, but you can't say that. No, but you said you have to say the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza.
I don't have to say what you asked me to say. More than 4,000 kids, they say.
That's true. You don't deny that, Mehdi. You don't deny that it's the Hamas-controlled.
I'm not
denying. And the health ministry is controlled by Hamas.
Let me finish my question.
You can, but please tell the viewers the truth. That information is provided by Hamas.
Okay, and that information, we'll come back to that information, but you've got dead Gazans. The American government say maybe more than 11,000. You've got a record number of journalists killed, according to the CPJ, a record number of UN workers killed, according to the UN, and yet Hamas still exists. It's still capable of firing rockets into Israel, still has the hostages. You haven't found their big base under the Shifa hospital either. Your critics say that shows this war is a failure.
I would argue that's all incorrect, Mehdi. We're hitting Hamas hard and they're feeling the pain. We just discussed that a moment ago. Why are they maybe now considering seriously a hostage release? It's not because, as I said, they've become humanitarians. It's because they're under a very, very massive military pressure. Look, this operation is not one that we wanted, obviously. This war was forced upon Israel in the terrible attack of October 7th, and we are fighting back, and we will destroy Hamas. We'll dismantle their military machine and we'll take apart their political control of Gaza. That's good for Israel for obvious reasons. We don't have to live in fear of terrorists crossing the border and killing our people and butchering our children in the middle of the night. But it's ultimately also good, and I hope you agree with me, it'll be good for the people of Gaza who deserve better than this terrible, authoritarian, extreme Hamas regime.
The people of Gaza who are still alive, as I say, more than 11,000 people dead, reported dead, 4,000 children. I just want to pull up on the screen.
Hamas's numbers.
You say Hamas's numbers. I should point out, just pull up on the screen, in the last 2 major Gaza conflicts, 2009 and 2014, the Israeli military's death tolls matched Hamas's health ministry death toll. And the UN, human rights groups all agree that those numbers are credible. But look, your wider point is true.
Can I challenge that? Will you allow me to challenge that, please? Can I just challenge that? I'd like to challenge that. I'll try to be as brief as you are, sir. Those numbers are provided by Hamas. There's no independent verification. And secondly, more importantly, you have no idea how many of them are Hamas terrorists, combatants, and how many are civilians. Hamas would have you believe that they're all civilians, that they're all children. And here we have to say something that isn't said enough. Hamas, until now, we're destroying their military machine, and with that, we're eroding their control. But up until now, they've been in control of the Gaza Strip. And as a result, they control all the images coming out of Gaza. Have you seen one picture of a single dead Hamas terrorist in the fighting in Gaza? Not one. Is that by accident, or is that because Hamas can control the information?
You asked me a question and you
Gaza?
said you would be brief. I haven't, you're right, but I have seen lots of children with my own lying eyes being pulled from the rubble.
Because they're the pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly my point,
because they're dead,
they're the pictures Hamas wants.
But they're also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not. I do not. I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died, those children.
Oh, wow.
First of all, we don't want to see a single child killed.
Okay, here's my question for you, Mark. You say, I agree with you. I agree with you. We shouldn't blindly believe anything Hamas says. But why should we believe what your government says either? Your military spokesman on Monday pointed to an Arabic document in the basement of a Gaza hospital and claimed it was a Guardian list on which every terrorist writes his name. But that was false. It was just a calendar with the days of the week on it. Your colleague in the Prime Minister's office, Ophir Gendelman, posted behind-the-scenes footage from a Lebanese short film and claimed it was Palestinians in Gaza faking their own injuries. That tweet is still up a week later. That is endless disinformation from your government, is it not?
I disagree, and I think on the important issues, look, I'll give you an example, Mehdi. Originally, we estimated... No, answer your question. Allow me to answer your question. I'm answering your question directly, if you'll allow me. We originally said in the atrocious Hamas attack on our people on October 7th, we had the number at 1,400 casualties. And now we've revised that down to 1,200 because we understood that we had overestimated. We made a mistake. There were actually bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists. When we make a mistake, we admit it.
Short on time.
Why does that give you permission? Why does that give you permission to accept Hamas's numbers? I don't understand.
I didn't ask about Hamas numbers. I said to you that your military spokesman...
you were quoting to me before Hamas numbers, Mehdi. You were quoting to me Hamas's numbers.
Because the entire UN and the human rights community and the American intelligence community on Friday said they trust those numbers. But you're dodging my question, Mark.
I'm not sure that's true.
Why did your military spokesman on Monday point to a calendar in Arabic and say these are the names of terrorists on them? That's false. Can you accept that here and now?
I'm not aware of the incident.
Let's put up the image. We have the image. You have no
I don't read Arabic. It doesn't help me. I have no comment. I'm not familiar with the incident.
Does your spokesman read Arabic?
Hang on, I have a question, Mehdi. You're a journalist. Have you made a professional mistake ever? Not intentionally, but have you made a professional mistake?
Exactly, and I own up to it.
Have you made a mistake?
So can you own up to the mistake?
So if I've made mistakes, you've made mistakes. But there's a difference between making an honest mistake and between Hamas that deliberately exaggerates numbers to suit its propaganda purposes. There's a huge difference.
So it sounds like...
It's like...
So hold on. You said propaganda. Can we just deal with your colleague Ophir Gendelman's tweet? It's still up 7 days later. Why has it not come down? It's a Lebanese short film. We can put it on screen. It's not Palestinians faking their own injuries. Can we own up to that mistake and take that down? Is that not propaganda?
Once again, I understand that was also a mistake. And
so why is it still up 7 days later?
I'll speak to Ophir about it if you like. I'll speak to Ophir about it if you like. He's a friend of mine and a colleague. I quite like him. He's a good man. He's actually very effective. Why is he effective?
Well,
he speaks mother tongue level Arabic.
Mark.
I agree. He made a mistake. But let's be clear. It's very good that we have someone who can speak Arabic in the Arab networks directly to Arab people, so they can hear Israeli opinions directly.
Appreciate
and Ophir is amazing at that. He's very important.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I know you're short on time, much more short than me, so I'm going to keep going. Let's talk about war crimes. Human rights groups, as well as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, have accused Hamas of committing war crimes. But they've also accused Israel of war crimes in Gaza, too, which you blame on Hamas. So I have a simple question for you. If Hamas gunmen were hiding out in a school in Tel Aviv or an apartment block in Haifa, would you be okay with the Israeli Air Force dropping bombs on those buildings, leveling them, killing the innocent Israelis inside in order to get the Hamas gunmen? Would you do that?
But you're right in your question. Of course, Hamas hides behind students and children. That's their whole policy. That's why we've had the casualties we've had. Hamas deliberately embeds itself, as you said in your question, amongst civilians. The fact that they buried themselves under the Shifa hospital in Gaza City, not one hospital, but a whole series of hospitals. They
Mark,
took
with respect,
over
you're not answering my question.
Turned them into military installations.
Would you bomb?
I am answering your question.
Would you bomb schools and houses in Israel if Hamas militants were believed to be under them and kill Israeli human shields in the process?
We don't deliberately kill anyone. That's not a fair question. What we are trying to do is eliminate this
Okay,
threat.
would you accidentally kill Israeli human shields? I'm asking a very simple question.
We wouldn't want to accidentally kill anyone. We wouldn't accidentally, no, we wouldn't accidentally want to kill anyone.
Understood.
But can I tell you, when the West fought ISIS, when the West fought ISIS in Fallujah and in Mosul, also there, ISIS used human shields. They actually used a hospital, I believe, in Mosul. You probably know this as well as I do.
I do. And what America did was wrong, I think,
and the West was fought. But I think it's actually, I think America did the right thing. You had to defeat these brutal terrorists.
Would you apply the tactics of Gaza in Israel? It's a simple question.
We wouldn't allow them to take over a school in the first place. We'd send in special forces and we'd take out the terrorists.
I know you're over on. You're out of time.
I did answer your question. Why did you say I did not answer your question? You didn't answer. I didn't answer it the way. I didn't answer it in the way you wanted me to answer it. That's the problem. I didn't answer it the way you wanted me to answer it. We would send in special forces. And we would neutralize the terrorists. That's what we've done in the past. You know we've done it that way. Yes.
Last question for you. You've got ministers in your government. I have to ask this question. Amichai Eliyahu, who said Israel should consider dropping a nuclear bomb on Gaza, which would kill over 2 million people. He's still in your government. Avi Dichter, another member of your government, went on TV and said this is Gaza Nakba 2023. And your boss, Benjamin Netanyahu, invoked Amalek, which was a biblical call for killing every man, woman and child. Mark, do you understand why that cannot be heard as anything other than calls for genocide or ethnic cleansing around the world?
So will you allow me to answer?
Of course.
Number one, that minister was reprimanded by the Prime Minister, Eliyahu, and he was told very forthrightly he's suspended from the government, and if he makes any statements like that again, he's fired. On the Avi Dichter, I think I actually agree with what he said. The Nakba, the tragedy that was brought upon the Palestinians in 1947-48 was because of an extreme irresponsible leadership that wasn't willing to compromise. And Hamas is doing the same thing to Palestinians in Gaza. Terrible. And if they are creating a catastrophe, it's because of Hamas. And on the third point, Amalek was known in Jewish history, and I'm sure you know this, that they attacked from behind. They killed the women and the children and the people who were sick, who couldn't walk quickly. That's why Amalek is in the Bible, is so condemned, because they attacked the innocent. No, I know my, don't tell me I don't know my Jewish history. I know my Jewish history.
Go and attack the Amalekites. Do not spare them. Put to death men, women, and children. Is that what you're doing in Gaza? That's what the Prime Minister invoked.
No. He was describing, first of all, no one in Israel is calling for women and children to be killed. On the contrary. How can you say
your heritage minister did. Really... He said nuke Gaza.
No. What we have said is we're going to wipe out Hamas, and we are going to wipe out Hamas. But we make a clear distinction between Hamas and the Palestinian civilians of the Gaza Strip, who are in many ways Hamas oppresses them. Hamas might want to kill Israelis, but the way Hamas treats the civilian population of Gaza, I'm sure you yourself will admit that they deserve better than that terrible Hamas terrorist regime.
But on that note, we're out of time. Well, I'll give you one very straightforward last yes or no question for you. Joe Biden wants a two-state solution in the Middle East. He wants it sooner rather than later, he says, to get peace in the Middle East. Does your government, does Prime Minister Netanyahu support a two-state solution? Yes or no?
I think it's a time now for war. It's a time for victory. And when that's over, with Hamas defeated, with Hamas destroyed, when you've taken out the most extreme enemy of peace, that'll create room, I think, for more moderate and pragmatic voices to fill the vacuum, and that'll be good for peace.
So that's a yes or a no on a two-state solution?
I gave you a good answer, I thought.
Ambassador Mark Regev, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Mehdi.